All right, welcome everyone to show number 18. I want to give a special thank you to our guest from our last show, Ken Reed. It was a pleasure to have him on the show to share with us how he got into the broadcast journalism, his rise to being a celebrated author, and most importantly, his advocacy for mental health.
So today we've got a really cool guest. He's one of the few people. It's funny because I would consider him a friend. He may not consider me a friend, but I consider him a friend. We're going to bring him out right now. He's the owner of the Sport Card Expo, Steve. So welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Hey.
So yeah, I really do consider you a friend, and I'm more of a loiterer. So I'm not a fanboy, but I'll just say I'm a fan of yours. And I love what you're doing with the show, and I thought that this would be a neat thing to do. We thought this would be a neat thing to do because the virtual expo is not that far away, and we're all really Jones for shows. So this is our way of enjoying that. So want to just talk about that and get an idea of you, the person, Steve. We want to know who Steve is. Who are you as a person? What were you like growing up? What is that hidden years that no one knows about Steve? And we can learn some things about him. Right. So tell us about your childhood. Did you collect cards? Like, were you always a collector? Well, I know you're trying to be a collector, but were you a collector?
Well, no, it's interesting. And yes, I consider you a friend as well. And I'm always a little bit intimidated coming on shows like this because I worry probably more so than anybody else does that I'm not a collector. And so I often struggle with trying to say all the right things and be in the right space. But the good thing I think is, and from what I've learned in previous endeavors that I've taken on, like Comic-Con and so on, is I don't need to know more than anybody else, and it's more about listening to others and understanding. And I often said and still say, I don't get it, but I can appreciate it. And I mean, I share it, but I appreciate it. And I always say that about collecting. I appreciate passion about anything, and I don't care what people are passionate about. So, but more and more, I'm getting the itch, I'm getting the bug, and so on. And this is a lot more organic for me than the Comic-Con world was. I'll be honest. I mean, it was. I have a more. It's an easier transition for me to connect in the sports space. So. Yeah, no, I didn't read comics. I didn't game, and I didn't collect cards as a kid. So the one thing I do remember being a big fan of that I don't often see these days. I got to check with Bobby Burrell or somebody, but is the NHL Power Play books. You guys remember those?
Yes, I do.
I thought those were the coolest things ever. But no, I'm seeing some great things now, and part of what I love about going to the shows, and what I do at the National is I love vintage stuff, and I don't like baseball that much as a sport, but I love baseball as history, as social commentary, as all the cool things about it.
There's a good thing about all of this is if it wasn't for the pandemic, we probably would not have talked as often, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. I don't think we would have. Yeah, actually, because of the whole first virtual and all our conversations around that, Jeremy's show was Sports Card Live, and you came on there, and we did some promo there. We wouldn't have gotten to know you over the last little while. So that's actually one of the benefits of having COVID, I guess you could say, for pandemic, I should say. The benefits of getting to know people a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you actually came in almost at the right time. Like you bought the show. How long has it been since you bought the show?
I bought it in late 2015. So basically the start of 2016. So I've done all the shows from 2016 on.
So it's almost like a parabolic effect, right? Because you came in at 2016, then it went down, and and you're on the rise. So now the show's in a really good spot with a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs, free publicity, the media talking about it. So that should benefit you quite well. And the other comment I want to make was I'm really happy that you're honest and open about your fact that you're still learning about being a collector, because the shows are genuine about it.
Yeah.
Especially now when people they know everything. They're experts behind every corner, and you don't pretend to do that. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and you know what? I've dabbled. I'll be on eBay and I'll see something and I'll think, geez, that seems like a good deal. And I'm just starting to press go, and I thought maybe I should just check a couple things. And then I think I reached out to you on a couple of those. Yeah. Why is this card so much cheaper than that? Am I truly finding an arbitrage that no one else has seen? And usually it's no. You bonehead, you missed it. The fact that this is a 1 of 10 versus a base card, but it's fun to learn. And you're absolutely right about the pandemic. And initially for me, I thought this is a big kick in the balls. I got to be honest, because I'm in the large event business. So, right out of the gate, I was, I've just through even some of the financing available from the governments and so on. And they say, well, you have to have at least 20% revenue reduction. Well, I kind of overexceeded that. I'm more like 90%. But my point being is that the pandemic really forced me to do a deep dive into the hobby. And I probably would never have done that if it weren't for the pandemic, because we all get sort of focused on just what's in front of us. And it's forced me, and I think it's a lot of people, to really look at what is it we're doing and how can I make not just the show, but my overall business better. So by understanding the hobby better, by getting more involved with the hobby, the virtual led me to some new collectors, new friends, new sponsors. We ended up doing the Beckett Summit last year. We ran that for Beckett on the same platform that I ran the virtual. So all of a sudden I'm talking to Fanatics and Panini and Topps and all the companies that I had a very hard time getting to meet before. So yeah, it's been great. I don't know that I want to ask for another pandemic, but it's been I think I've done about as well from it as I can. And thank gosh that the hobby is doing as well as it is.
I don't think anybody wants a pandemic. Let's be real about that.
Yeah, no.
That's not the optimal condition right now, but
yeah,
there is a positive, and I always try to look at things glass half full. So I am thankful I got to meet you for just through that, and there's a fortunate happenstance. The other comment I want to make is innovation comes at desperate times. So you're in a position where you kind of have, and for everyone who's not aware, this is what you do. The show is your bread and butter. You are a sole owner, right? And you're sole I won't say small business, but you're a business owner, I should say. So you're feeling all the effects. So you're lucky that you're even able to get this far without suffering it too much. And hopefully we're going around the corner. So, so I am thankful I got to meet you.
Well, thanks for saying. And that's you mentioned that, and getting again to know and to see what Jeremy's doing, what you're doing, and really understanding how important the expo is to you guys and to the collector community has really been an awakening for me. I don't think that I really appreciated how important it is, and I don't mean just financially. I mean just from a social standpoint, from a just it's really it gives me a lot more energy and passion for it, and I want to make sure that this is the right thing for you guys in the best possible way. So that's I've been really grateful for that.
Awesome. So what was it about Expo that made you want to buy it and take it over from Al Sinclair? And for those who don't know Al Sinclair is a legend in his own right. He was a kind gentleman to me, but to some people he was a bit he could rub people the wrong way, but I appreciated him. So how did you go from Fan Expo, which I consider the Rolls Royce of shows, and come over to virtual expo, the actual expo, and then eventually virtual expo, and make it the Rolls Royce that it's becoming?
Well, yeah, and thanks for saying. And I sort of fell into the Fan Expo piece. I'm from the sports marketing and sponsorship world. That's what I've been doing mostly. And I was actually living in California for a while. I was working with Mark Burnett, if you know who he is. And it's hard not to, with Survivor, Eco Challenge, The Apprentice, all those shows. And for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with, I ended up coming back to Canada and was looking for some other things to create and to own. And I ended up being in the video gaming space. We were working, frankly, on the first competitive video gaming league called Major League Gaming.
Oh, yeah.
And so we ended up, a young guy that worked for me who was really dialed into the gaming space and just the pop culture space said, hey, we should go to Fan Expo and exhibit there and sponsor it. And so that's how I came to know it. And right out of the gate, I was, holy shit, like this is the biggest show you've never heard of. And I kind of, that was how I described it to other corporations and that sort of thing. And really for me, it was the same thing that I saw when I first went to Fan Expo is what I saw at Sport Card Expo. Is there's nothing here. And for me, as an outside guy, there's nothing here. Like there's nothing big and shiny and fancy. And if you've ever been to San Diego Comic-Con, it is, and it's become everything in the hobby. So every studio, every distributor, every imaginable company, anything to do with entertainment is there. But it started out as a comic show, and with Fan Expo, when I got there, it was just, but it was artists in the artist alley, and it was comic book dealers and pop culture dealers. But they had a tremendous big following. There's all these sub communities and subcultures within it, which is fabulous. And talk about passion. I mean, super passionate folks that are fully committed. So anyway, I started to work. I started to talk to the owner of FanExpo, and he and I became pretty close. And we started to work together. We made kind of an interesting deal. But we worked together for a number of years. FanExpo got to be so big, is at the convention center, that they said, okay, you've got too many people. The fire department is giving us a hard time. They're going to shut you down. Next year, you've got to move into the entire facility. So you can't just be in the
Right.
And that was really what prompted it. And Amon, who started FanExpo, was actually in the sports hobby before he started that. So as a 16, 17-year-old kid, he was setting up signings at hotels by the airport and that kind of stuff. So we started to brainstorm, how do we fill the full space, which in hindsight wasn't really an issue. And he said, well, why don't we look at doing sports? So back in 2012, we actually approached Al about buying the show under FanExpo banner. And he just, although he was open to it, it didn't happen. He just decided not to. So, fast forward in 2013, we did a sports component to FanExpo that some of the you watchers and so on may have been to. And it was reasonably successful. But the FanExpo kept growing that we didn't need it in the following year. And frankly, it was harder to do with it. So we went back on a FanExpo. Fast forward a couple of years, FanExpo got bought by a big global publishing and event company. I worked for them for another year, and then they kind of said, thanks, we got this. And so I decided at that point, I went back to Al and said, hey, are you still interested? He said, yeah. And then within, I think 3 months, we had done a deal to buy the show. So
that's awesome, because it was you completely breathed some fresh air into it. There was a very much an old school type of approach to the hobby at that point. So it's good to see that. One funny comment is, I'm glad you never got into cosplaying hockey players, although there are some people that do cosplay as hockey players at the show, and some do a really bad job of it.
It's funny because we kind of debated, like, how is that going to be when the two merge? Is it oil and water? Is it, there's a lot more, I think, in common than people acknowledge in terms of the fandom. Like fandom, it's a pretty fine line between sports fandom and comic fandom. I got to be honest. It's, you still dress up, you still, but there's, as absolute divides that just don't ever merge. It was kind of funny at the event we had in 2013. The guest list was like off the charts. I mean, we had,
I was there.
Yeah, Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Joe Sakic, Connor McDavid. We had Rudy. We had Willie Schumacher, the Secretary of Jockey. We had but we also had Joe Montana, Hulk Hogan, Joe Montana. Yeah. And at one point, mixed along with Alice Cooper and some of the cast from Walking Dead, and at one point Joe said, "Yeah, I'd like to really walk around," and he kind of said, "But I should have some bodyguards and stuff." And well, you may not need it. And he literally walked around FanExpo with barely anybody even. He did.
You know what's funny is Joe and I actually almost collided into one another at that expo.
Oh, that's funny. So it was kind of cool, but. Again, I think it helps sometimes that I'm not really into it, because I don't get sort of distracted by that piece. So I try and do the right thing. But anyway, I forgot what the original question was that had me explaining all that. But
no, we were asking how you got into taking over the show and into cosplay. The funny thing about Joe Sakic and all those players. Not at that time, I wasn't in the financial situation I was now to take advantage and get all those autographs, but.
Yeah,
I remember Joe Montana was walking around, like just walking around, and these cosplayers had no idea who he was. And I'm like, if you were in anywhere else, you'd be mobbed. I remember Joe Sakic, a girl in front of me, she was doing something, and she asked, and I happened to be right there, and she asked Joe to hold her drink. He's like, "Can you hold my drink?" And he's kind of like, "Yeah, sure, I'll hold the drink." And I remember looking at it and going, Joe, you don't even know who this is.
That's funny.
But that was a good show. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I was a Fan Expo attendee for a long time.
Yeah.
I'd like to quickly say hi to a few people. Dennis, thanks for joining. Dennis does every show, so thank you for that. Yannick as well. Thank you for coming by. Just so you know, the Islanders just beat the Penguins.
That's Richie, by the way. That's
So this
Richie.
is Richie.
Yeah, there he is. Yep.
So Richie's very happy, and Richie, we miss you too. And we're gonna get into it today, but we will talk a touch upon the actual show. You might see you sooner than you think. So,
Okay.
so you did touch already on some of the changes you made, and you talked about some of the synergy between Fan Expo and the physical show, the sports card show. What other changes have you yet to add that you want to do to make things better? Have there things you've thought about? Like, are there things you can share with us that you've thought about that you've learned through time through the pandemic? I mean, obviously, the virtual is one accent piece to the live show. I just want to give you a chance to comment on that.
Yeah, so I'll touch on the virtual stuff second, because I think that there'll be a lot of long-term changes because of the pandemic and some of the other things that we've done in the interim. But initially, I mean, and I don't like to take too much credit because and as Al Sinclair even said at the time, he said, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I'm kind of I know I'm mailing it in, and he was getting grumpier every year and just didn't want to be there. And
is he really? No,
you don't say.
A lot of the things were really rocket science, but just listening to people and just how do you feel about being here until 9 o'clock on a Friday and a Saturday? Do we really need that? Is there any value to it versus? So a lot of just making it easier on you guys. How can we make moving easier and smoother and just communicate more often and better? The website was, I think, probably one of the first 3 ever designed on the internet, so that was an easy fix, and there were those kinds of things. But a lot of it, again, I know you guys have both been, but if anybody has never been to a Comic-Con or a Fan Expo, it is absolutely a first-rate event in terms of the fan experience, and that's what it's all about. And many people predicted, with online, the death of massive in-person events like that, but not at all. It's just there's that sense of community that you can't replace, and people even through pandemic have talked about our show is going to come back, and in some industries and so on they won't, particularly kind of more trade shows and so on. But as we know, it'll absolutely stay with us here. But the experience that you get with the celebrities, whether you're voice actors that you wouldn't know if you tripped over them, or it's guys like Will Shatner or any of those, you get to see them up close. You get to hear them tell stories you'd never otherwise hear, and you get to share that with like-minded fans. And that's the kind of thing that has always been missing I think at sports shows. And a lot of it has to do with just the basic economics. When you get a guest to come to Fan Expo or Comic-Con, they're usually there in most of the cases for the entire weekend. Here's the financial deal, and here's how it works. Versus, the sports guys are used to being paid on a per piece basis, and everyone's pretty myopic around how they look at it. And it's not, hey, if you do this radio hit for us the week before, it's going to bring more people. It's going to benefit you as well. But it's not the contract. It's not how we do it. And it's just. And it's self-perpetuating because the players think that way because the agents have drilled that into their head because and so on. So one of the first things I did, I started to put the stage up and to do Q&As. I remember Bobby Hull did my first Q&A that I did, and Bobby Hull was my dad's favorite player, so it was really cool for me to sit and listen and hear him tell stories. And I just thought, what, this is great. The experience there shouldn't have to be about everything is transactional. There should be things that I don't mean to say necessarily that are free, but that frankly are free. And quite honestly, that becomes more self-serving anyway because people spend more time there. Some of the stats I was able to glean from Fan Expo were amazing in terms of the number of hours people spend and how many days. And and even the one that blew my mind, over a 4-day weekend. I don't know if I should be saying this or not, but over a 4-day weekend, the last show that I did, there was $1.8 million withdrawn from the ATMs on site.
I believe it.
I believe that.
And that's, consider 50% of the people have bought their tickets in advance. It doesn't count what was in their wallets. It doesn't count, Visa and credit and all that. So just like people, I have no problem spending, but it's about, I think, getting and giving value. So
Steve, I will say I'm guilty of, because every year I get the 4-day pass. So
yeah, no, and it's great. And that's what I want to make for this, and just the idea of having cool swag and exclusives, and Upper Deck's been great about doing that kind of stuff. I'm actually building more of that. I built tiny bit into the last virtual, and we've got another intro coming into virtual for June. But to create that same, and I don't mean economy, but that same experience. Where
one of the things you did too was I noticed that you started doing trade nights like towards the end of the show. And that was something that I heard a lot of feedback that collectors really enjoyed. They were able to trade with one another towards the end of the show.
Yeah. Again, really, nothing I've done is revolutionary in most of my career, but I actually look into other industries and so I want to see what's cool and does it apply and can it carry over. I didn't invent trade night, but I saw it at the National the year before. I thought, that's a great idea. It's you look at what's happening organically within the hobby and how can you build on that or borrow from it. And it's not IP but it's worked. And I'm doing some similar things with the next virtual, which we'll get into. But so I just think that think of from a collector's standpoint and ask people what they want and try and deliver it.
What before you go on, Kent, I want to know if you could actually touch upon any comical. Don't have to name the player or the person. Comical riders. Anything in the rider you wrote, you had to write in, and you're like, really?
Well, I mean, you get some of the classics. So Kevin Smith, he did Fan Expo, gosh, back in early on for me, maybe 2009 or something. So I had only been there a couple of years. First of all, I had to look up who Kevin Smith was. Yeah, I know. That's how much of a non-fan I was. But in the old days of Kevin Smith, he had a typical rider of X number of bottles of this type of vodka and all these kinds of things. And it was I think partially intentionally obnoxious just because he could. But that was that, and you took it or you didn't, and it was with Jay as well. Sorry, I almost Jay. So that was there, and then, but I mentioned that one because when I started Windsor Comic Con after I left Fan Expo, I started a small show in Windsor, and Kevin Smith was one of the guests I decided to bring in, and he had gone through kind of a personal change over the years. As we all do, we age, we get married, and so on. And I think either his doctor, his wife, or just his conscience said, you can't keep living like this.
Yeah.
He did a massive change in his lifestyle. And, his rider then was, I need some, organic whole milk. I need, some, this, there was still obviously I need local weed and that kind of thing, but that was okay. And I tell you, I became a huge Kevin Smith fan after when he did my show in 2015. I'll tell you a brief, funny story. It was so great. We had to go and get some photos signed in his room upstairs, and of course, I don't smoke, and I don't begrudge anybody that does, but Kevin obviously does. He's like a Snoop in that sense, or Seth Rogen, and so he lights up a fatty from the the local guy that brought it for him, and it's like I'm just getting smoked out of the way. I have to get these things signed. So then he gets fired up, and then we go down to the room, and he starts to talk. And these things, people line up in the middle of the aisle to be able to ask a question. And his rider specified 90 minutes. He would talk for 90 minutes, including Q&A and everything else. There were still people there, 90 minutes in. There only 4 people lined up because they kind of capped the line. 3 of those 4 people were still there because he was still on the first question. But he did not take a break for 3 hours. He did not stop for 3 hours. At 3 hours, I was starting to text his agent and saying, "Look, do I pull him off at this point?" And, I was watching. We were recording it, and the poor camera guy was starting to do the pee dance. Like he was so bad, but he was in the middle of the room on an elevated platform. He couldn't do anything. He was just, and it was 6 of us were just kind of watching that poor guy. What do we do? And but he just was so wound up, and he's so funny. He's a smart guy, and it was for a non-fan, I became a fan, and it was a very, very cool experience. So, I would say that one was definitely high up among them.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kent, go ahead, buddy. I had to ask that question, but go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
So Steve, prior to making the big splash into Sport Card Expo, and you mentioned you've had your experience at Fan Expo. Was there anything prior to that kind of led you towards this path of doing, I guess, entrepreneurial in terms of promoting and doing shows like this? Like, what led you to this side of it?
Well, So I've been in the event business for a long time. What I did a pretty corporate, like I did an MBA after university.
Okay.
And, I went into banking and I sold for a while for Xerox, and that didn't really sit with me from a lifestyle personality standpoint. So I left with a friend of mine to start a clothing company. He was in the music business. I was in selling for Xerox, and we went to the big bike show. Big international bike show in Vegas, and kind of a similar thing. We were at the bike show, we had our booth set up, and we had great, cool product. And who walks into the booth but Anthony from the Chili Peppers?
Oh, no way.
And again, I didn't recognize him. Obviously, I knew who the Peppers were, but and my partner Ralph, who's usually a kind of obnoxious, overbearing guy, was like almost shaking, and he was white and he couldn't speak and everything else. And I, what's going on? And he was just kind of pointing at Anthony, and so and another cool story. But so that was what my first foray into the entrepreneurial world, and then that led to a number of things, and I ended up doing a race. I'm kind of athletic. I've been sort of a weekend warrior and stuff much of my adult life, and I ended up doing a race called Eco Challenge that was Mark Burnett's first.
Oh, right, sure.
Endeavor, and so without all the the long twists and turns, I ended up doing some work for Mark Burnett, and that kind of got me into the event space and the entrepreneurial piece. So I did events for myself, I did events for others, and then that's what kind of morphed. So I've worked for everybody from IMG at the the big corporate end,
IMG, yeah.
to myself and so on, and so along the way I've gotten experience in a variety of different sectors, working for myself and for others, and this just seems to be a good mix now. So I can speak to C-level executives as well as just empty the garbage or whatever needs to get done at the end of the show. So
Nice.
I love how you ride your. So just so Steve flexes at the show, he rides a scooter and a little bike, not a little bike, a mountain bike.
that was
one time it was someone's giving away the fat bike. Remember the Maple Leaf fat bike? So you were scooting around on that one, and that was fun. But then I look over at Steve and I'm like, why am I eating my Mars bar? Oh, my wife better not hear this. I'll just keep quiet. Sorry, Kent. You're.
So Steve, with the pandemic, you decided last year in 2020 to carry on the show on a virtual level. Why was that important to you, and why are you excited about the virtual expo continuing for this spring in 2021?
Yeah, it was interesting because I was a bit of a late adopter to the pandemic thing. So I was thinking, this is a bit of it's a bad flu. So I didn't respond quickly. And one of the I've got some great people that work with me on producing these things, and Meet knows Mikey really well. And Mikey's in the event business and has done the events himself, and he's in the industry association. So he had already done some research on virtual events, and it was we started to talk about, well, we should really do this with Sport Card Expo, and I said, yeah, okay. I mean, it's the hobby's on fire. No better time to at least try it. And I knew, again, every time I'm looking to make a decision about what to do with the show, I first think, all right, how will dealers respond to this? Is this something dealers want? I kind of go down from there, but dealers are always my first considered stakeholders. And so that defined for me what I needed in a platform and what I didn't want. Like, there's some really cool platforms where you've got 3D and everybody gets their own avatar and it looks super cool, but it doesn't work with a damn, right? So we landed on the platform that we have used the last 3 shows, or 2 shows, and the Beckett, and they'll be using again, and it works really well. And the main priority I had was, the only way I want to do this is if dealers can buy and sell, and if people come in and buy and sell. It's got to be, in that sense, like the expo, and not wanting to jump too far ahead, but where I kind of went initially, I tried to replicate an in-person show.
Sure.
And some elements work and some elements don't. But that part worked really well, and the platform that we use and everything else around it worked very, very well. It was easy to learn, and then eBay has been a partner for mine since before the virtual, but obviously they really leaned in on the virtual because it's absolutely in their wheelhouse. And we've all seen what's happened in the hobby and with eBay specifically, and so everyone has really embraced it. And yeah, we all want to be back to regular, but until we can, it's worked pretty well.
Are you able to share with us some cool new features or promos that you have going on this time? Are you able to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just from a functionality standpoint, there's the great thing is that this industry changes very, very quickly. So, the company that owns Hopin has made some dramatic changes, not the least of which is buying StreamYard, I mean, the platform that we're on right now and that you're broadcasting from. So there's some things like that. There's some things that just make it much, much easier. As you'll see when dealers get signed up, they can start setting up their booth right away versus the last two shows, they had to set it up 2 days before the event started. And so that's a big deal. There are a lot more and better links to integrate your Instagram page, your eBay store, your web store, your Twitter feed. All those things can be really easily integrated in. So that works much, much better. And then, the piece when I just said a few minutes ago, some of the things don't translate as well. The best example of that is the athlete experience.
Sure.
I would have, when I tried out of the guests, I got to have guests. If it's a show, if it's a sports show, I got to have guests. So, I spent some money against that quite honestly did not pay off. And I to this day don't understand why, but I've seen it's been the same thing, with some of the Comic Cons. They've tried it. It hasn't worked. The virtual thing hasn't connected in the same way. I thought if someone's going to spend $100 on an autograph, why wouldn't they spend $100 or $150 to get a 2-minute one-on-one video conversation with a Phil Esposito or or somebody? And I don't know. I can't answer that, but so far they haven't. And the corollary of that is kind of what's really attracted people in terms of the sessions and the stage sessions and so on has been hobby talk. It's been listening to Jeff Wilson from Sport Card Expo. It's been hearing the guys from Beckett talk about grading or all the hobby stuff, the panels and that kind of thing. So there's a real appetite for anything hobby related. So I'm not going to force people to do the athlete thing, and some of this comes organically. So from the November show, one of my sponsors, collectible.com, which is the fractional ownership company that's really making incredible waves since they've launched the platform. But they've done a deal with Emmett Smith. He's one of their spokespeople, and they announced that at my last virtual, and Emmett came on stage and spoke, and they had a great Q&A, and he talked obviously about his career. And so that experience is still there, but it's just different. So I'm
actually sharing your main page on screen just in case you don't see it, so you can talk through it as well.
Yeah, and this is kind of what you see when you first come in. It's kind of the landing page or the registration page, and the ticket options are there on the right. And what I learned is that I have to have a free admission option. That was a big learning for me out of the first one. And again, just something I thought of. For the first show, I could have had maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 people charging admission.
Sure.
I opted to go with a free admission, and I got something like 5,500, 5,600 people, which was much better for the dealers, much better for the sponsors. And just it cost me a little bit of money, but it was the better decision to make. So I keep that free option, but what I've been working on is creating packages that people want to buy.
Right.
So we've had for a $20 package, you might get a $10 eBay coupon, and then 2 cards from Upper Deck or something, so that people are willing to spend that. So I think that's a better balance of letting people if they just want to check it out, come and see. So that's a big thing, and that's what you see here. But going back to the content piece and the new things I'm excited about. Again, nothing is really proprietary that I'm doing, but I'm just kind of watching what's happening in the hobby. Where and how are people buying and selling? And a couple of things that I'm doing. One is is the new kind of slab fest idea, and what that is a it's and it came out of a problem that I had. Thank you. So it's basically, there's so much emphasis on grading and buying and selling slab cards, and they look so cool. So that's what this is about. And where this came out of is in the first show, and to a smaller degree, the second show, there were a bunch of people that were coming in, and they were just flooding and almost spamming the event chat with, I'm selling this, I'm selling that, and pulling people to their own websites and that kind of thing. And we were, understandably, our dealers were upset. Our dealers were paid to be there and working hard to be there, and these people were coming in trying to hijack that. And yet, instead of being punitive about it, I said, well, how can I help everybody? Because the dealers want to buy from these guys as much as those guys want to sell. But how can I respect, this? And so this was one way to do it. So this time for the June show, every registered dealer will get one session in Slabfest where they've got 3 to 5 minutes to present all their slabs. There'll be kind of a split screen, so your contact info will be there, and you kind of go through and show as many or as few as you want with that. And then attendees that aren't dealers can purchase one of those sessions as well. So I think it's a win-win, and it's kind of like the holes in the donuts becoming Timbits, right? It can be either a negative experience, or you can turn it into something that's really bad for you.
Or I mean, Evian does spell naive backwards, but that's a different story.
That's right. So, and another thing is, and this is, again, I mean, you'll probably laugh at me for this too, but I'm just, I'm a subscriber to all the hobby content that I can get. And I saw the video out of Dallas that Jeff Wilson did, where he's doing pack wars or pack battles, whatever it's called. And I'm thinking, hey, that's entertaining, so we're going to be doing some of that. And I think, the first time I had to watch a box break, I got to tell you, I thought I was going to cry or fall asleep. I didn't know which one was going to happen first. Now, that part of the hobby has changed dramatically. Like, it's full on entertainment, and guys are doing it really, really well.
Yes.
So it's evolved, but something like the pack wars is kind of taking it to the next level, and it's content and it's entertainment. So we're doing that kind of thing as well, which I'm pretty excited about. So
excellent.
Yeah.
So you can see some cool cards here that people potentially could be featuring. Did you want to get into the cost breakdown, just so people are aware of what it is?
For the Slabfest portion?
Correct.
Yeah. So as I said, if you're a dealer and you register for a booth, you get one session for free. You get that included, which I think is a pretty good bonus. And you can buy additional sessions as well for $150 for 3 minutes or $200 for 5. And if you're not a registered dealer, you can still buy those, but they cost a little bit more. They're $225 for 3 minute or $275 for 5 minute. And so one of the other changes that I'm making is just in how we align the schedule. So I'm not going to try and overlay things. I want to make sure the expo is still the key part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the kind of Slabfest and those kinds of things are going to be becoming part of the main content. So when those Slabfest sessions are on, there won't be anything else competing against it other than the expo. So it'll draw good traffic. We'll be pushing traffic there. So I think they'll be well received. I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, I think it's a really neat way to do it, and this is a perfect platform.
So one of the things, this is awesome, and I think people will gravitate towards this, but one of the things that we had forgotten earlier, and my apology, because you did send me some of the artifacts to look at, when we were talking about the VIP ticket package, I want to show real quick. Can you just touch upon this really quickly, because we missed this in the first time?
Yeah, no problem. And this is what I was talking about when I said there's got to be a free admission, but these things, still cost me money. It's just not, and I do a lot of work in charity, but I don't intend for this to be all charity. So this is how how we can start to make the business self-sustainable. And Upper Deck has been such a great partner. And we had great success from the November thing that we did with the Lafreniere and Byfield cards, and they were very well received. And so this was actually intended to be what would have been the promotion for the May Expo that Upper Deck would have done. So we started talking about what can we do this time. And so the VIP ticket package this time will include these 12 cards that you see in the Victory Black Rookie set. So that'll be an optional ticket purchase, and you can see the pricing there is 29 Canadian or 23 US plus shipping and handling. So,
Nice.
which is, again, I think it's a pretty great value for the cards, and it'll be it's an Expo pre-release special. So,
I'll sorry, go ahead and finish your point.
yeah, no, I was going to say, so Upper Deck continues to be a great partner for us to work with, and we've also got some great prizing, a lot of Connor McDavid signed memorabilia, and even a Gretzky signed piece that we'll be using to promote the show and that kind of thing. So that's been a big part, frankly, of why we're been able to generate good numbers of attendees, is things like the contesting and the prizing, and the great thing about all the companies in the hobby, they're all doing well, and they all want to support the hobby. So this just makes good sense for everybody, and so I'm happy to say it's working well.
So the one thing I will tell everyone who's watching, this is in Canadian prices, as you can see. It also has US prices in here.
Yep.
And another thing to note, $29 Canadian or $23 US, probably cheaper than a box break, probably cheaper than going into a group break, probably cheaper than a lot of things. So all things considered, it's not a bad price for a group of rookies to get here. So I would be remiss if I didn't show this. I want to make sure everyone's aware. And actually, this time around, like the physical show, are they getting the lanyards? Are you going to have the lanyards for the physical show, or are you doing anything for the virtual for that, or no?
Well, not doing lanyards for the virtual, if that's what you mean. But the lanyards were one of the things that were kind of a borrow from the Comic-Con world, because lanyards are a big deal. And again, it's nothing that hadn't been done, at the National or other shows before. But it's a great chance, and people collect. They collect lanyards. I had one guy, unfortunately, who passed away last year, was one of the dealers for the longest time, but he had a collection of every one of with multiples of every one of the show programs back from the very first one. So, and he was kind enough to give those to me, before he passed. So I've now got that history, and it's really neat stuff. So I actually have, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was the
Wow.
Sport Card Expo Zamboni. I got a couple of those things, and
oh wow,
yeah. So it's just that's the neat part of this, and so I am trying to create those great value things. If you're a 4-day pass holder at Fan Expo, you also see those great bags, and I'd love to bring those bags and that kind of thing in. It's just the challenge is just around, it's getting the rights to the images and that kind of thing. And it's
Steve,
not easy.
I've even seen people at past shows. They'll trade the lanyard cards.
Yeah,
I've seen that on the floor, but they're trading.
I have guys coming up to me, hey, can I buy the extra? Yeah.
Hey, I traded for a staff one. I wanted a staff one.
So. Yeah, you collect all 6 or whatever.
Right.
Right.
And trust me, you feel like a big ham when you're asking someone on the staff if you can have their lanyard, and they look at you like, what are you, 3? So it's a bit strange. And the other thing I wanted to actually, you know what, Steve, you could do for the physical show is you can have not lanyard, you can give everyone Sports Card Expo face mask, and people can have buy and sell on it. You could just put it on, like you could theme it. So if you're a collector, you get a collector one. If you're a seller, you get a seller one. If you're a
like we see, it'd be like Two-Face or something. It could be this.
It could be. There's lots of options. I've got plenty of bad ideas. Just to let you know.
Steve, did you catch our Lego show?
No, I didn't actually. With that,
so Jeremy was actually on there quoting or touting that somebody should create a Sport Card Expo Lego logo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it's and again, I had some exposure to the Lego fandom in my Comic-Con days, so it's again another very passionate group of fans and collectors. So, yeah.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about, we touched upon it before in our show with you. I believe it was you. Yeah, you and Jeremy on Sports Cards Live. We're talking about the sponsors. I want to talk about. Okay, so what sponsors you have this time around? I'm going to share the screenshot of the sponsors. You want to talk about them real quick because some may be new, some may be old. There might be something that jars your memory in terms of what they're doing. So let me just share that real quick, and you can talk about it.
Yeah, and some of this hasn't even been fully updated yet. But right out of the gate, I mean, eBay has been a presenting supporting partner of ours from the get-go, and they You know, I've heard eBay take a lot of flack from collectors over the past couple of years.
Sure.
You know, and I understand where it's coming from, and it's part of being the 800-pound gorilla in any business, I think. But I give them full marks because I think they're being super responsive, and they're addressing it. But they're really great people to work with, and they're collectors. Like the folks that we have that we deal with are really passionate about the space. They're passionate about what they do, and they're really great. They're open-minded, and again, this fits exceptionally well. And it just makes sense. You know, eBay is the de facto benchmark for anybody looking to price, not just in our hobby, but pretty much anything. So they're great to work with, and they're fully on board for this. And then we have what I'll call the usual suspects, but the card companies have been great. Upper Deck is best known for my physical show, because the in-person show, because of it's Canada, it's hockey. But I've been doing more and more with Topps and Panini, especially as basketball, baseball, and so on have continued to grow and do well in this country, as well as all the other properties that they have: soccer, F1, UFC, WWE. So they've all done well. And then through the two great distributors in Canada, Universal in particular, distribution. Again, guys that really, really support the hobby, and they back what I'm doing, and they support their dealers right the way through. So super happy to be working with all those. Beckett is a great media partner. They're been at the show as well, doing rock card reviews, and so all these folks are really great to work with. So I always want to maintain those relationships and build them, but there's so much happening in this space right now, as you guys know, with new companies, and that's a big part of what's so exciting right now, is that whenever a hobby or an industry attracts so much new attention, new companies and new technologies come in, and whether that's a company like ComC, which is not new, but right. Their business is blown up, and again, a great company that really understands and is based on the collector mentality. So they're involved. The collectible guys are super great to work with. Starting to work with other new companies like Loop the app, which is not in Canada yet, but will be shortly, and MySlab, and a lot of these new companies are really, really exciting, and then of course all the dealers. It's some dealers get it, and some that I didn't think would surprise me, and have really embraced it. But yeah, it's the good thing is the ones that haven't embraced it have just said, look, we can't even keep up with what we're doing. So we can't sell more because we can't even manage what we've got. So, again,
by the way, just so everyone is aware, 99 Goals, our Cardboard Culture, it's been sponsored by Cardboard Culture, so they're going to be at the show. Just so you know that we have our own little banner here. So we're sponsoring. Just full disclosure, we are 99 Goals.
Sorry.
So we're sponsored by our own channel, and Jeremy's got Sports Cards Live channels here just to show you. And I'm just doing a bit of a walkthrough of who's here.
Yeah, and it's a real good mix. And I really I strive to have a good representation of all sports and non-sports, of vintage and modern, and and just be represented. There's not just cards, obviously, but memorabilia. So it's whatever you would see at the national or at my regular show. It's pretty much represented at the virtual.
Can you speak to your autograph guests yet, or not yet?
Well, I can, in that it's not been a focus of mine. So, as I said, the last two shows, I felt I needed to start with that, and it's actually I'm making the decision not if somebody wants to be there, and it's something, it's a quote unquote a deal that works for everybody, where they either want to promote something, or that's what I'm looking for. But quite honestly, it's just pushing rope uphill to say, okay, let's get a Johnny Busick or somebody like that to come in, because they haven't made that shift, and I understand why. Like it's and I get it. They don't want to do things on spec or so on either, but we've had some really interesting guests, and that's what I try and find. I was pretty. Who was I? Oh, Bushwhacker Luke.
Oh yeah.
So I had very low expectations from him, and I gotta admit, what an entertaining guy he was. Like, just a super great storyteller. I mean, wasn't super appropriate for underage kids, but it was definitely great storytelling. And again, that's what these things are all about, right? So my focus is on more hobby content than player content. Well, I'm not saying there won't be any. It hasn't been what I've felt the need to lead with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kent, I've been as usual in every show. I have to say this at least once. I'm hogging the mic, so I'll let you get the next set of questions.
Sure. Can you say how many virtual vendors we have this time? Has it increased from last year? I don't know if that's something you want to release or not. If it's not, that's fine. You don't have to answer.
No, and it's no problem. I mean, it's still kind of early. So for both shows, we've had approximately 50 vendors, plus or minus 4 to 5.
Right. Okay.
And then some others. I think the mix is going to be a little bit different this time. There are a lot more new collectors as opposed to traditional dealers, and a lot more breakers and that kind of thing that we're going to see. One of the things that I point to is that if you're a numbers person, the first 2 shows, when you figure I had roughly a quarter of the number of dealers as the regular show, with half the number of fans. So the number of attendees or collectors per dealer is way up. So I'm absolutely bringing the horses to water, and it's it's up to you guys to make them drink. But it's but from that standpoint, it's really good, and it gets everybody. So I don't want it to get too big, to be honest, because I want to make sure again that those that are there do well. But I'm focused on getting that right mix, and so I think it'll be probably similar to the last one and maybe more. But yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Steve, are there any, like, some of the feedback that we heard last year was, or at least from attendees, which was when somebody entered one of the virtual dealer rooms, they weren't there. It was just a sign directing them to like some link or go to my eBay page. Is there any talk about trying to address that this year, so that maybe that we can get more real people and physically in front of the camera versus just
yeah. No, and it's something that I saw from the very first show, and this is not a fallback answer, but
sure.
If you go to, and I use the National only because I go to the National and I look, as opposed to my show where I'm obviously I'm operating and running, so I look at different things. But half the guys, a portion of the guys you'll see are standing up and they're rearranging their cards and they're engaging and talking. The other half are sitting on the chair, eating a sandwich and spilling ketchup and almost not even caring if anybody's there. That's kind of no different than what you have seen at some of the virtuals. And I don't care if it's an in-person show or a virtual show, or in this hobby or any other business. You got to do 2 things. You got to work on your product, and you got to work on your presentation.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to help educate and support the dealers to do that. And again, if you're an independent guy, you can't be in front of the screen for 8 hours a day. You've got to go take a bathroom break, or you might just need to recharge, whatever it is you need. So we're trying to give them other ways. And that's where I said a lot of the enhancements to the Hoppin platform now is that not only can you have the screen where you're seeing kind of what we see now with you talking, the dealer talking to several people, but you can scroll on down below it where you can be doing slideshows or video clips, or a Google Docs link to your collection with pricing and or a link to your Instagram page. So there should never be any reason why they're watching you, eat lunch, or they're looking at a hand-printed cardboard sign.
Right.
So that's just, it's just not good self-promotion. So
it's interesting because now this will be the third time. Is this the third one? The third one, right?
Yeah.
So having the first one, it was like, you were talking into like a one-way mirror. It was like, and people are there because you can see the number, right? And you're like, I'm over here. You can come in. Eventually, people, bit the bullet would come in and start talking. By the second one, you had more people able to come on. By the third one,
people are less intimidated. So, I mean, and I did this kind of the same thing back at Summit, is sometimes you just want to go in and see what's there.
Right.
But again, a dealer who's in a booth needs to at least acknowledge you. So they should at least just say, "Hey, welcome to the booth. If you have any questions, let me know." Just as somebody would, you walk into a retail store, you want to be acknowledged. You may not want to go on camera and that kind of, and that's fine. But that's, again, those are the kinds of some of the tips and tricks that we give people to do. But these other things enable you to do that, and we're enhanced other things too. Like when you sign up, you put in keyword tags searches, so that here's what you sell or what you're buying.
Okay.
So somebody can then search on those, and if you don't have a pre-war hockey, then they're not going to bother with you, or whatever it is. So those kinds of refinements we've been making along the way.
So we want to just quickly, we're at the hour mark, Steve. We have about 5 or 6 more questions. We'll go through those if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of supporters from the crowd. So our buddy Eli from Little Shop of Heroes is here. He wants to give you some street cred. So as a longtime supporter and expo attendee, keep up the great work, Steve. You're breathing life back into the show. Kudos to you and your team. I second that, and I'm sure Kent does as well. And we have this loiterer here, Barry Ma.
Who's that guy?
He may be some guy at ComC. Apparently, they're doing something. I don't know what, but Barry.
You know what? I was just about to compliment Barry and another one of the vendors, Framework, because you talk about the guys that maybe have the cardboard sign, and then you have guys at the other end like Barry and the ComC team or Framework guys that really make it super engaging. And ComC set the record at the last show for the most number of fan engagements, because they're putting the time in, and they're doing fun and engaging stuff with people, and it pays off. And similarly, Framework, I've got some screenshots, and the great thing about digital is I get all of this information. I can tell you how many people spend how much time in your booth and that sort of thing. So it's a big reflector of what you've got and how you present it.
For sure. And Barry's another one that if it wasn't for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have been able to call him a friend either. We talk quite often. So I'm also a huge supporter of ComC. So I'm looking forward to what they do. Although as a dealer, we don't have time to spread out of our booth that often. The one similarity I will tell you, at the real show and at the virtual, I cannot leave my booth.
Yeah, no.
It's like everyone's like, "Did you go walk around?" No, no, I don't have time to walk around. Are you crazy?
No, it's a good sign, and that's part of why I want to do some of these other initiatives as well. Is I don't want to program everything, but I do want to. I want to support and encourage the kind of community stuff that happens. Whether it's the Thursday night drinks or the, So you talk about the trade night. Trade night, something we did a trade night at the last virtual. We're again, if it's okay, I'll jump ahead to. There's one topic about the November show.
Sure.
I'm optimistically planning for a November show. I'm creating all kinds of contingency plans, as you can imagine. I would have to. In fact, I've got a call tomorrow with the convention center. But one of the things that I'm doing, it didn't start as this, but I'm adding a fourth day, if you will, to the show.
Oh, okay.
A lot along the lines of what the National does,
right?
With a preview. So it'll be a Thursday evening preview, 4 or 5 hour block of time for dealers and VIP ticket holders. But it also, there's. I can explain it as, okay, this was a COVID initiative where I've got to spread the attendance or whatever, but it's just, I think there's going to be all that pent up demand where people are either going to want to network, or they're going to want to buying and selling and having that first look see. So I think there'll be great demand and support for it. So those kinds of things are what I'm working on.
You're probably right about that, Steve, because the Dallas show has been going on for quite a couple times now.
Yeah.
And I think just people in Canada alone are just all bent up and they want to get to a show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to your point, if you add an extra day, I think the pent up demand for people wanting to get out there, it's going to be well received.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it will.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be very tough for you to do social distance trading. So you're going to have to actually enforce it and make them stand 2 feet apart.
Flicking of cards, yeah.
Flick the cards, like there's a base card. Actually, I might do that. Anyways, so I know we've skipped a few steps and we've covered a few things already. Let's see, there's a couple things that we wanted to get into. So I think, Kent, we can probably get into the number of people that attended.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's, I won't tell that story. It's not really that relevant. But so with the 2 shows from last year, we had a little over 10,000 people attend.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it was almost evenly split. So it worked out to about 95% of the attendees were evenly split between Canada and the U.S.
Wow.
The other 5% were international. So, as we're all becoming, getting to know the guys from Cherry in Australia, they've been big fans, and they're actually going to be part of the June virtual.
Great. That's awesome.
We've got guys from the UK, and so quite a story. And Upper Deck was telling me stories about talking to people from Finland and that kind of thing. That and again, that's one thing that Upper Deck, they're in the they're attending the events and they're talking to people. And we didn't talk about the networking feature, but it allows people to chat directly. You can set up private video conversations, all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty robust system that way. But yeah.
What other cool data points can you share with us? For example, like besides foot traffic, is there anything you can share with us? For example, I just think of one. I work in advertising and tech, so I think of these things.
Yeah.
So an example for me would be average viewership time within a booth. Would it increase the average from show to show to show? Like, that kind of stuff. Was there an abandonment rate high or low? Like, just curious on that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the kind of stuff that I try, but can't really do effectively at the in-person show. Especially, I mean, the hardest thing for me was even selling advanced tickets. I mean, the culture for the in-person show is, I'll pay cash at the door and that kind of thing. And so I'm trying to build a database so I can understand and communicate with people better. And they don't necessarily want to do that. They still want to. Now, again, I may be forced to, or one of the things I need to do is to push towards no cash for tickets, so people have to pre-buy, or I don't know yet. It's too early to say, but there's those kinds of things that are part of the behavioral change.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought on that. Hit me again with the question.
Basically, we can tell it's
the metrics.
Yeah, we're talking about metrics. I don't want to keep you too long.
The metrics. The primary thing has been, as I was mentioning with the ComC and framework examples, is the amount of minutes per booth. So I get that report and I can see it, and the number of minutes and the number of interactions, like collector interactions that each booth has. And when you see the reports, ComC has consistently been blowing that away. Similarly, you can tell at any point in time how many people are in which booth, whether they're watching the stage show or whether they're in the this booth or that booth. And then we can see the amount of event chats. And so some of those things we've been able to leverage better. And then frankly, to turn those around, it's the dealers say, well, how can I get messaging out? Well, we've learned that we can utilize the chat feature and
right.
And position it as an asset to promote and give that access to everybody. But same thing, when we do this Cloudfest piece, we'll be able to see how many people watched each one. You'll have each dealer or collector will get the raw footage because it's all being recorded. And I didn't mention things like all the main stage sessions and session room sessions can all be pushed out onto other platforms. So you could be simultaneously broadcasting it on Facebook Live or YouTube or Twitch, that kind of stuff. So that's just the beauty of anything that's web-based. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. So Steve, before we're getting closer to closing out the show, before we do that, can you explain to the audience about your white glove services? I'm sure not everybody knows about it. That'd be great if you could touch on that.
Yeah. No, it's something. Again, it's something that I kind of built out of. I'll call it. I don't call it a necessity, but because I had all this free time and I wanted. I listened to other people in the hobby, and I remember who. I think it may have actually been again Jeff Wilson or somebody like that just said, or it might have been Gary Vee, but saying, looking for opportunities, understand the behavior of your customers, and it's all about that. And just you have to be living under a rock to not follow what's been happening in the grading part of the hobby. And so I just we started to talk about different components of what I'm calling collector services. So from and it's marketing guy, and you guys can appreciate this is how do do you build your business? And one thing the pandemic has taught me is that I'm kind of exposed in the large event business. So, while I can be maybe forgiven for not having predicted a pandemic, doesn't mean that I have to keep my business solely focused on in person.
Sure.
So, and again, it's how can I better serve clients and add more value and frankly get more value. So I started to look at the grading space and where can I play in that while still not eating my dealer's lunch and
right
and respecting that. So I just started talking about the problems with grading and again it kind of came organically where we had a mutual a friend of a friend approach and say, I've got all these cards and I want to get them graded. Can you help? And it turns out he had 30 odd modern cards, like 1 of 5 Lucas, or all really, really high value. And I said, well, why don't we go and do this? And I have relationships with these companies through the expo,
right?
And yeah, we can offer this service to you. We'll take these down. We'll get them graded for you. We'll handle them front to back, but and then we'll offer as a service. So I did 2 trips earlier this year, and they were kind of initially experimental trips to work out, not to work out the bugs, but get to see how it worked and if there were any things that we were missing. But again, even part of diving into that was, and I don't mean to strike fear at anything, but I was shocked. I'm shocked at how many collectors are underinsured, how many collectors don't have digital records of their collection, and how many collectors send their cards to be graded uninsured or underinsured. And thankfully there's not been many problems to speak of, but those are only increasing. So basically the white glove service is a concierge service where we manage that process for you literally from door to door. So in the GTA we pick up the cards from you, we take them to the grader, they fly with me on board. They're not checked baggage. They never leave my hands from the time I leave here to the time I'm at the handing them over to PSA or Beckett or whoever the.
So sorry, Steve, for 1 sec. So it's actually yourself and not somebody representing you. It's yourself that's doing
no,
it?
it's been me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've done 2 trips. So I've been COVID tested and quarantined probably more than half the hobby this year. But it's worked out, and it's improving my relationships with collectors and with the grading companies as well. And people say, well, geez, it's at least $300 US to grade a card, and plus your fee and everything else. And yes, but I'll speak to the first client. He sold several 6-figure cards, and he's got one that he's looking at getting 7 figures for. So for the right person and the right cards, it's a great service.
Excellent.
Yeah, and
so we know people personally that have used the service, and just so everyone knows, these pictures in here are actual submissions. So just so you're aware, these are not someone else's collection. This is cards that Steve has actually taken and returned and gotten a grade for.
Yeah, and I've I don't have to count exactly, but I think there's 15 collectors so far, collectors and some dealers that I've taken cards for, and so there's all kinds of references now that I can provide people that are interested. And I sent out this email blast on Friday, and I got quite a number of inquiries of people that just wanted to know how it works. And I had some that just, I didn't realize that's what it was, and thinking I was another bulk submitter and so on. But so this is a different piece. It doesn't apply for everyone, but I am, as you can see here, I'm doing another trip in June. I don't know that they formally announced it. Yeah, I didn't see a formal announcement, but it looks by all accounts that the National is on. So I opted to create another trip in advance of that if people are looking to have cards graded pre-National.
Just so everyone's aware, Steve's contact details are here. Is Steve Menzie, and 1-888-466-7116, toll free. And of course, you can always reach him at sales@sportcardexpo.com. I can personally attest to the service. I know people have sent cards and received them back, and they're very happy with it. I think it's a service that'll continue to take off. I do think that you should create some sort of like cheesy, that guy that gets the cash for gold. You should do something like that with your cards.
Steve. Russell Oliver, yeah.
Steve, so I see here you've got CSG, PSA, and Beckett.
Yeah.
Now, is that the 3 that you're kind of hitting up for clients then?
Sorry, those are the 3 that I've done trips.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. but I'm also I'm looking to work with SGC, and then of course I work as well with the companies domestically, but there's really no value add that I can provide to KSA and M&T. We're both great companies and great supporters of the expo. But this is a service, frankly, that has grown out of just a gap in the
right. Yeah, for sure.
And kind of a related thing that I'm doing is when I spoke to earlier, I get calls every month, and I have since I started the show.
Mm-hmm.
Say it's a woman whose husband passed and left this boxes or cupboards full of cards, and she doesn't know what to do with it. And there's another list, so it's not properly documented. So I started to think, well, whether it be for estate planning, insurance purposes, or even just to facilitate buying and selling, I'm starting to offer collection digitization services as well, where we're
nice.
Collection scanning and digitizing, so that you can then through a software package like Chronosio, you can upload it all and change pricing in a flash and have an API that feeds up into your eBay store. And so that's kind of part of the new business model, but it's also a fee for service opportunity that again, that was stuff that literally just came out of I'll find 2 or 3 books after each show of people's, I need these 12 cards, and here's I don't know how people do it, but so yeah, I'm very excited about this. It's been well received. Again, it's a niche.
For sure. I would say, Steve, to your point earlier, I would say there's a lot of collectors out there that do not have digitized copies or insure their stuff.
Yeah,
there's a lot out there.
Yeah.
So this service that you're going to provide, I think, is going to cover a pretty good niche too.
Yeah, no. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I look at other things. I mean, Beckett started offering collectors insurance and so on, and I approached them right out of the gate, but it's not yet available here. And any of you who attend my show, you'll remember a few springs ago when the roof literally blew off.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, thankfully it was over the autograph portion, but could you imagine? And the rain had stopped. But could you imagine if that was over? Jason Martin, and Len Potty, and BMW, and just the countless thousands of dollars that would have been destroyed. So yeah, all these things that I think about, that how can I make it better and build my business in the process.
So just so everyone knows, Steve wants to change his white glove to a sequin glove with all the bling he's going to get. And also, I think that, Steve, what you should do, you should have a counter that shows the dollar value of all the cards that you're submitting and what's coming back. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
Be like the McDonald's sign over with 2 billion hamburgers.
The before and the after valuation would be super cool.
Yeah. I think that would be a really neat thing. So it's something I thought of. Again, I'm a marketing guy, so I think it's silly things like this.
Yeah.
We're at the over the hour mark. I just want to do a quick couple of recaps. So just for everyone listening, the whole purpose of the show was to bring Steve on to talk about the Sport Card Expo, the virtual edition, and the live version. I've got up on screen at the Sport Card Expo. Virtual edition is June 19 and 20th. Yeah, June 19 and 20, coming up in about 3-4 weeks. Please go to the website, thesportcardexpo.com, to find out anything to do with timing, pricing, or whatever may have you. We'll put links at the bottom of our videos. You can go there. Of course, I'm being hopeful. I'm a biologist background, so I'm going to not be pessimistic today. We're hoping that we're going to see the 4-day Sport Card Expo in November 11th to 14th. That's actually not that far away. Can't wait to see that happen. So I just want to make sure we call that out. Also, if you want to get a hold of Steve, please reach out to sales@sportcardexpo.com. He's more than gracious to answer emails. After all, he's become friends with me only because I bug him so much. So let's be real.
That's it.
Wanted to end up one thing I wanted to say on the show at the end of every show, we always want to ask the guest one question, and we're going to ask you the question, and you will not be spared. So I want to ask you, what inspires you, Steve?
That's a good question, and it's kind of funny where so my family, and I went on a little bit of a journey there, but I think as fathers you can appreciate that. But so that's key. I just think life's too short. It's how can I live better? do more, experience more. I'm not a collector in the traditional sense, but we all collect something. I collect experiences. I'm kind of an adventure guy, and I look at things as an adventure. And so, yeah, I'm inspired to do more, to do better, and to wring everything I can out of my time here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
you,
joining us, especially on short notice. It was just like we just thought, we're like, oh, why don't we do this? So we really appreciate you coming on short notice. We'll make sure we put all the links. Kent, did you want to end with any comments?
No, other than the fact that we appreciate Steve, we appreciate the Sport Card Expo. We're huge, as you know, participators at the show.
Yeah.
When it's live as well as virtual. So again, thank you, Steve, for coming on tonight and explaining to the audience about the new show coming up, and then the virtual show as well coming up in a couple of weeks. So we appreciate you being here tonight. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the platform, and again, just thanks for what you guys do to make the hobby and the expo so great. So I'll continue to support you in that.
So hang out there for a second. We're going to sign off the show. And just so you know, we'll bring Steve back again in the very near future to either talk about the real show or the post show. We'll probably be talking about the show on Jeremy's channel. I'm sure there'll be lots of places we'll be talking about the show. And I wasn't kidding about your sequin glove. We're going to get you the sequin glove. That's going to happen.
Which is great because my daughter's super into Michael Jackson right now. So
oh, there you go.
There you go. All right, folks.
All right, everyone.
Thanks for the impromptu show on a Wednesday instead of Tuesday. We'll talk to you all soon.